Hey, it's John Hollis with Rockers in Recovery.
Radio.
I want to welcome everybody to the show. Make sure that you're tuning in. If you are, you're tuning in at Blog Talk Radio, Rockers in Recovery. You can also listen to this afterwards at the Rockers in Recovery streamer. We have Gary Tanin on tonight, music producer. We're going to be talking music and recovery. Gary's a great guy. He's been around many, many years. We're talking decades that he's been in recovery, and been doing music production for many, many years also. Want to bring Gary on. How are you, Gary? Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, John? Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure. You know, me and Gary have spoken online a few times, you know, chatting back and forth on IMs. But one night we actually had a conversation. I think it was a marathon, 2 hours.
Yeah.
You couldn't get off the phone. It was a great conversation. But you had so much knowledge, not only with the music industry, but also with the recovery aspect of it. And first of all, I want to ask you a little bit about the music aspect, because you've been in music production for many, many years. What got you started in the music aspect of it?
Well, what got me going in music in general was, I had, like a lot of kids, have bands in high school. We had a band in high school that managed to somehow land, this is in the 60s, a little bit of a record deal with a local producer, and he was very influential in getting a bunch of 16-year-old, 15, 16-year-olds started by giving us a chance to record in his studio. And that record was on a local label called Odessa Records, which was pressed by RCA and had the distribution that RCA normally has for imprint labels like that. And it was actually an R&B label, so why they decided to give us a shot, I guess, was really revealed later as I thought, wow, I was really motivated to try to accomplish something from an early age. So that's how I got in music. I always had an interest in playing piano, and when the Beatles came out, everybody got into music.
Yeah, it was. It's funny. I talk to musicians, and a lot of them, especially the old classic rock and rollers, all got the virus, the music virus. Oh, yeah. Sitting and watching the Ed Sullivan Show. It seems like that was the takeoff point for a lot of people.
Yes, it was. It was. If you were so, I say convicted to do something in radio, then that was the time. I mean, not in radio, but in anything having to do with music. That was the time that you got the bug. It was either that or the Rolling Stones or something equivalently phenomenal. And we talked about this before. It was a period of time that we were so lucky to be around at a time when music was so constantly a melting pot of influences. You had James Brown, you had you had Memphis Soul, you had the East Coast, the Young Rascals, and then you had West Coast psychedelia, and then from England you had the Beatles and you had the Stones, and I mean. Wow, and that that was the hippie '60s, and things were melting together, and so if you got into it then, you thought anything was possible, right? Because
Absolutely.
If you listened to the radio, it sounded like anything was possible. So.
If you're tuning in with us right now, we're speaking with, of course, Gary Tanin, music producer, and of course a great musician in his own right too. And Gary, I want to ask you, I know that you just came out, or you're working with Jack Spann, is that correct?
Yes. Yes, I am. Jack.
What is that a little about?
Sure. Well, Jack and I have been working now for almost 2 years, and Jack was somebody that was introduced to me through a mutual friend, David Bowie's producer, Tony Visconti, who I might add, because I'm not breaking any anonymity, he clearly posts it on his Facebook when his annual birthday comes up, is also in recovery and been in recovery, I think, over 15 years. But Tony and I go back quite a ways, and he, Tony is, I'm really fortunate to call him a friend, but he was somebody I looked up to when I was a kid, right? I mean, he worked with David Bowie, T-Rex, Moody Blues, Joe Cocker, on and on and on. You look at his discography, it's amazing. Anyway, I had, over the years, developed at least an email relationship with Tony, and Facebook relationship when it finally came, down to Facebook a bit. But it was for quite a while. And had done some work for his son. Over the years, we at least bantered back and forth. But around, I think it was towards the end of 2014, somebody contacted me via email and said, Tony Visconti suggested I get in touch with you, and would you be interested in looking at a project I'm working on? And I said, sure. So that was Jack Spann, and Jack had at that point worked as he was a very accomplished musician, session guy, road guy from St. Louis, had graduated from quite a well-known music school in St. Louis with a lot of kind of notable genius musical people, and moved to New York. Ended up, he's also an actor, so he did a 3-year stint at the Lincoln Center playing in a play called War Horse. And so this was towards the end of that. Jack got in touch with me. I did a little bit of work for him. That broadened out to actually producing Jack's first solo record, which came out earlier this year. But during that time, it never really was that much of a curiosity to me because, hey, Tony Visconti sent this guy to me. I was very grateful that, he thought enough of me to send me some work. And Jack and I hit it off, and I heard Jack's stuff, and I thought, wow, this guy is really, really good. Yeah, I want to work with him. So, on around late 2015, we're getting ready to release his first record. It'll be coming out in the first quarter of 2016, which was this year. And as the whole world witnessed, David Bowie released his last record, Black Star, and then died shortly after that. And it was some short time after that. It might have even been a month, but Jack was in a really desperate strait. He needed to at least be able to talk a little bit about some things that really were bothering him, and one of them it basically came down to we waited a while for clearance to be able to talk about it, but basically what had ended up happening is Jack had worked with David Bowie on that last record, and that was the connection to Tony in the first place. Jack was also signed to a non-disclosure agreement, which is typical in scenarios like that. So when David died, Jack was just like devastated. First of all, because he had worked with the guy, and then secondly, that he thought he'd never be able to actually talk about it. So through a series of events, we got the approval through Tony Visconti to talk about the fact that Jack had worked with David on the demos for Black Star. Jack was not actually used in the final tracks that were on the record, but he spent 4 days with David Bowie in the studio, along with Tony Visconti and Zach Alford, David Bowie's longtime drummer. So, at some point, perhaps those tracks will come out. But what a story! So here we were on the verge of putting out his first solo record that he and I had worked on, that I had no clue there was a connection to David Bowie, and now we could actually say Jack had worked with David. So that's the backstory, and we have a brand new record that'll be coming out actually in 2017, which is a complete studio production, full band effort, full production with many different guest musicians, and it contains an homage to David Bowie, a song that Jack had written right after he had met David and before David died. So I mean, this is it's kind of a chill creating experience if you think about all the pieces that came together to make this happen. But
if you think about it, when you put all of these things together, and that's an amazing story, but when you put them all together, it's like a recovery. It's a God thing. When you're doing the right thing with your life, isn't it amazing how everything comes together?
Well, I don't know about you, John. I'm sure that we've maybe alluded to this idea in the past. It's like in whatever recovery discipline you come to this to, and neither I nor anyone that's had any length of recovery is going to be telling anybody how they absolutely have to do it. So that's not the point. Anybody can find out the right ways and wrong ways to do this by doing a little bit of research and really vetting your sources. So I'll just say that there are things that work and there are things that don't work, and be smart about what it is you spend your time trying. But in the things that do work, of those things that I've found that at least from a objective point of view actually have a success rate, they are spiritual-based programs. And when we talk about a way of life. And in that way of life, which is obviously a change from the way of life you might have been living, while you were in the midst of your addiction and disease, when you're on the other side of that, there are expected principles. And of those principles are doing the right thing and not looking for any result except the knowledge that doing the right thing is its own result. And to that end, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if anybody could have told me that when in 1980 when I sobered up, that the kinds of things that have happened to me would have happened, I would have said, first of all, you're lying to me and you're trying to paint some kind of La La Land picture. Nobody has stuff like that happen to them. I would have never, ever believed it. Yet, I'm sitting here as proof of that, and sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, did this really happen? I mean, everything I ever would have wanted, plus way more, has come as a result of not really doing anything out of the ordinary, except for, like you say, trying to do the right thing, trying to, correct the mistakes that you make, and getting good counsel.
Good stuff. Something, we're in our final minute here. I want to thank Gary for coming on with us. Gary, I want to have you back in the future. We're going to talk more recovery and really get into some great stuff. I also want to let everybody know that we're trying to work it out for Gary to come on down to the Rockers in Recovery Music Fest. It's going to be held coming up here in February. The meet and greet the night before on February 10th. The 11th is the festival. Starts at 11 a.m. with two great speakers to kick it off, recovery speakers, and then the show kicks off at noontime and goes until about 11 or about 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're hoping to get Gary down here for that. But Gary, thank you for being a part of the show, and we look forward to having you back with us.
Absolutely, John. Thanks. It was a pleasure.
God bless.
God bless.
All right, guys, that's it. We're out for tonight. And I look forward to hearing back good stuff from people that listen.